I think about, man, I have to perform songs every single night or every other night.
Everyone knows Bruno Mars, the performer, but nobody knew the real Bruno. The kid who performed 1,000 shows before age 10. The teenager who slept in abandoned zoos. The man who lost everything to gambling. At 39, Bruno decided to tell the whole story. Not just about the money he owes, not just about Jessica walking away, but about the childhood trauma that drove him to fame, the addiction that almost killed his career, and the dark family secret he's carried for decades. What he revealed will change everything. Bruno Mars was just 4 years old when most kids were still learning to read. While others played with toys, he was already performing 2 shows a night, 5 days a week. His family had a musical act in Wiki, and he became their star. They called him Little Elvis because he wore a tiny glitter jumpsuit and copied Elvis Presley's moves like he was born to do it. He was so good that in 1990, at just 5, he stole the spotlight at the Aloha Bowl halftime show in front of 40,000 people. At 6, he appeared on the Arsenio Hall show. Then he had a small role in the movie Honeymoon in Vegas in 1992 and made $600 for 1 day's work. He joked later that it was his first Vegas residency. Before he even turned 10, he had performed nearly 1,000 shows. That kind of start builds something deep inside. Maybe that's why years later, when he was rehearsing for the Super Bowl halftime show, he said it felt like recess. But life didn't stay that shiny for long. When Bruno was 12, his parents divorced and the family act ended. Suddenly, there was no stage, no lights, and no money. Bruno, his dad, and his brother slept wherever they could. Sometimes in a yellow '93 Cadillac, sometimes on rooftops in Wiki, and even once in an abandoned bird zoo where peacocks screamed all night. They didn't have a real bathroom, so they'd sneak into hotel pools just to take a shower. Dinner was often just Spam musubi from 7-Eleven. For 5 months, they had no electricity. He practiced guitar by moonlight because they couldn't afford amps. At school, kids teased him for wearing thrift store clothes, but Bruno kept pushing. He earned $75 a night impersonating Michael Jackson so he could pay for demo tapes and bus fare. That struggle made him tough. In 2003, music labels heard his demo and said he should be the next Ricky Martin. They wanted him to sing in Spanish. Even though he didn't write in Spanish, he didn't want that. He didn't want to be a label's idea of a Latin artist. So, he picked a name that came from childhood, Bruno. It was after a big wrestler named Bruno Sammartino. And he added Mars. Why? Because a girl once told him he was so confident you must be from Mars. When he moved to Los Angeles in June 2003, he was 18. He stepped off the plane with only $600, 3 demo CDs, and the name Bruno Mars written on his luggage tag. In his first year, he went through 4 places to live, including a $40 a night motel on Sunset and a cramped Koreatown studio shared with 6 other guys. To survive, he lied his way into a DJ job on Van New York Boulevard, even though he had never touched DJ equipment. He got fired after 2 nights, but the $75 he made helped him keep his phone from getting shut off. That summer, there were weeks when he ate nothing but 99-cent tacos from Jack in the Box. In February 2004, Madone offered him a deal. It was only 3 pages long. Bruno joked that he'd seen breakfast menus thicker than that. The label didn't know what to do with him. They wanted a Latin pop singer. 9 months later, they dropped him without releasing a single song. It was humiliating. He had already told his family back home that he got signed, but that failure turned out to be lucky. Another artist dropped by Madone at the same time was Philip Lawrence. The two became friends. They promised each other they would make music that record labels couldn't ignore. By 2006, Bruno and Philip were broke but driven. They wrote music in the back of Philip's beat-up '99 Toyota Corolla parked outside a small studio in Hollywood. Ari Levine ran the studio. He had gear. Bruno and Philip had ideas. They'd buy him burritos from 7-Eleven as payment. Whenever a chord or beat felt good, they'd shout, "That's a SME." That became their name, the Smezingtons. They worked 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, analyzing hit songs and learning how to write their own. They studied more than 1,000 songs before even releasing one. Then Bruno's sister, Hey, stepped in. She was working in fashion in West Hollywood and slipped one of his demo CDs to a guy named Mike Lynn. Mike worked for Dr. Dre. At first, he almost tossed the CD because the voice sounded weird, like a chipmunk. But at 43 seconds in, Bruno hit a high note that made Mike stop and rewind. He flew Bruno out for a meeting at Record One Studios. They didn't offer a deal, but the fact that someone important had noticed gave Bruno a real boost. In LA, being seen by the right person can change everything. To survive, they sold a song they had written for themselves called Lost to Menudo for $20,000. It was just enough to avoid getting kicked out of their place. But their big break came when they wrote the chorus for Florida's Right Round. The song hit #1 and sold 636,000 downloads in its first week. That was a digital record at the time. Then they wrote Bob Owes Nothing on You, and it was another hit. By the time Bruno released Just the Way You Are in 2010, songs he helped create had already sold more than 15 million downloads for other people. Bruno Mars didn't explode onto the scene overnight. His solo journey began with a blink, and You Miss It EP called It's Better If You Don't Understand. It dropped on May 11th, 2010, with barely any attention, just 13 minutes long, only 4 songs, and by the end of 2011, it had sold just 27,000 copies in the US. It looked small, forgettable even. But hidden in that short EP were songs that would become the backbone of something much bigger. Just 5 months later, he released Doo-Waps and Hooligans on October 2010. That one hit like a bomb. Made on a budget of $70,000 with no borrowed samples, the album went 7x platinum in the US and crossed 15 million global sales by 2020. In the UK alone, it stayed on the official albums chart for 400 weeks straight. That's nearly 8 years, longer than Abbey Road or even Thriller. Then came the singles. His debut, Just the Way You Are, entered the Billboard Hot 100 on 7th of August, 2010, and hit #1 only 8 weeks later. It stayed on the chart for 48 weeks and went 13x platinum. In the US alone, it sold 6.7 million downloads, landing it among the top 25 digital tracks ever. Then came Grenade. It pulled in 559,000 downloads during its peak week. That was the 8th biggest weekly total in music history at the time. It didn't just go to #1 in the US. It topped charts in 15 countries. And it didn't stop there. Between January and March 2011, Grenade hit #1 on Billboard 3 different times, something only 5 other songs have ever done. By March 2011, Bruno had 2 songs that were each certified over 5 million in US sales. The only other artist to do that before him was Lady Gaga. The music industry noticed. The Grammys gave him 7 nominations in his rookie run, including Album and Record of the Year. No male solo debut had earned that since Lauryn Hill. He didn't win the biggest categories, but he did walk away with Best Male Pop Vocal for Just the Way You Are. He was only 25 and the youngest man to win that award since Stevie Wonder in 1974. Soon after, Billboard named him their top Hot 100 artist. The IFBI called him the best-selling global artist of 2011, even beating Adele's Late Year Surge. But he wasn't done. In October 2012, Locked Out of Heaven came out. It started slow, entering the charts at number 34. Then it climbed. Within 11 weeks, it hit #1 and stayed there for 6 straight weeks, from 22 to December 2012 to 26th of January 2013. That made Bruno the first solo male artist, since Bobby Vinton in 1964, to score 4 Hot 100 #1s in his first 2 years. Even Michael Jackson didn't do that. Sales kept pace, too. The track hit 1 million US downloads in just 10 weeks, and eventually went 10x platinum. Spotify streams later climbed past 1.8 billion. Critics didn't see it coming. Rolling Stone called it the Police revival nobody ordered, but everyone needed. That reggae rock beat broke up the EDM monotony that had taken over the charts. In less than 4 minutes, Bruno shifted the entire sound of pop radio. At first, Unorthodox Jukebox wasn't meant to be wild. The label expected a tight, catchy dance album. But Bruno and his team secretly expanded the vision. They stretched the budget and dabbled in 9 different genres. from the disco shimmer of Treasure to the bold sensual rock of Gorilla, and even reggae with Show Me. The label panicked. One memo warned that radio wouldn't play an album this chaotic. Bruno didn't back down. He even gave up 4% of his future royalties to pay for live horns and vintage gear. The risk worked. Within a year, the album had moved 6 million copies worldwide. Critics were stunned. Spin magazine said it felt like flipping through a jukebox. At 3 a.m. chaotic, but magnetic. And Bruno's genre-blending blueprint would later be copied by artists like Dua Lipa and Harry Styles. The 2014 Grammys brought more fireworks. Unorthodox Jukebox won Best Pop Vocal Album and 2 other awards. Engineers revealed that each song used more than 120 individual audio tracks, the most of any nominee that year, even more than Daft Punk's Random Access Memories. That same night, during his Gorilla performance, someone filed a complaint to the FCC over a 0.6-second shot of Bruno thumping his chest. It was meant to mimic a gorilla. No fine was issued, but it did earn him a spot in the 2015 Guinness World Records for the shortest televised act to trigger an obscenity review. After the Grammys, sales spiked. Unorthodox Jukebox shot up 171% on the Billboard 200. That was one of the biggest Grammy Week boosts since Alanis Morissette in the 9S. Then came Uptown Funk. It started as a jam session on 1st May 2014 in a makeshift studio. The first version was captured on a voice memo that Mark Ronson still keeps starred in his inbox. The final song took 11 writers, got tangled in 5 lawsuits, and finally dropped on 10th of November 2014. It went straight to number 1 and stayed there for 14 weeks, from January 17th to 18th of April 2015. That was the longest number 1 streak of the decade until Old Town Road came along. The song sold 300,000 downloads per week at its peak and hit 15 million daily streams around the world. In the UK, it passed 1 million sales in 10 weeks, becoming the fastest-selling jazz-influenced single since I Feel Good in 1965. People were obsessed. Delta Airlines even reported a 37% increase in first-class drink orders the month it became their boarding song. Someone at the airline called it Uptown Drunk. The BBC even used the song's tempo to teach CPR in a 2015 broadcast, but his next big move almost didn't happen. When Bruno handed in 24K Magic in 2016, the label wasn't impressed. It only had 9 tracks and ran for 33 minutes, shorter than some EPs. But Bruno was firm. He wanted it to feel like a 1990s party mixtape with no skips. When the Grammys rolled around on 28 Dealer January 2018, it swept. 24K Magic won Album, Record, and Song of the Year, becoming only the second R&B album of the century to pull off that hat-trick. He won 6 awards in one night. The results were immediate. Streams of That's What I Like jumped 130%. And the song ended up going 7x platinum. By April 2018, the album had crossed 5 million global sales, even though it never hit number 1 on the Billboard 200. The tour that followed was just as wild. 24K Magic World Tour started on March 28, 2017 in Antwerp and ended on 30th of December, 2018 in Honolulu. It included 215 shows on 6 continents. In New Zealand, he broke Beyoncé's record by selling 48,483 tickets in Auckland, 4,100 more than her 2016 stop. By the time the tour ended, it had sold 3.5 million tickets and earned $367.7 million. That placed it among the top 10 highest-grossing tours ever. It even outdid YouTube's original Joshua Tree Tour and Lady Gaga's Monster Ball. Every song on 24K Magic was crafted with insane attention to detail. The talkbox intro of the title track mirrored Computer Love from 1987. The smooth synths in Versace on the Floor echoed Babyface's 1994 classics. The remix of Finesse featuring Cardi B was mixed using a 25-year-old console just to match that early 9S sound. Even the 9-track count wasn't random. Bruno said his favorite cassette, Bobby Brown's Don't Be Cruel, had 9 songs on each side. Critics loved it. One called the album Pop's Most Valuable History Lesson, and others credited it with bringing funk back into the mainstream at a time when everything was about EDM drops. And somehow he still had more surprises. In September 2018, Bruno recorded the hook for Gucci Mane's Wake Up in the Sky in less than 30 minutes. The track came out on September 14th. It peaked at number 11, but had staying power. By July 2025, it had gone 6x platinum and pulled in 1.4 billion Spotify streams, more than many number one hits that year. It was late at night in Las Vegas. The Dolby Live Theater was packed. At 11:47 p.m., Bruno Mars stepped into the spotlight wearing a gold tux. The room went quiet. Then he said it, "Silk Sonic is real." Seconds later, the music started. A smooth vintage ballad filled the room. The song was called Leave the Door Open, and at exactly 12:01 a.m., it dropped for the world to hear. People didn't just like it, they loved it. It hit number 4 on Billboard right away, then rose to number 1 in just 4 weeks. It stayed there for 2 whole months. By mid-2022, the song had been streamed over 2.3 billion times on Spotify. Silk Sonic wasn't just real. They were unstoppable. A year later, they walked onto the Grammy stage. Both were dressed in white tuxedos. Behind them stood 18 string players, and sitting like royalty was Bootsy Collins on a velvet throne. When the song ended, the crowd rose to their feet. That night, Leave the Door Open won Record of the Year, Song of the Year, and Best R&B Performance. Their album An Evening with Silk Sonic came out in November. It was recorded the old school way. One room, no fancy software, all analog. It sounded like 1973 in the best way. In the first week alone, it sold over 104,000 vinyl copies. That was the biggest vinyl debut for an R&B act in more than 30 years. Everything was done with care. For one song, Bruno recorded 16 different versions of just the snare drum. Anderson .Paak's final drum solo on 777 happened at 3:07 a.m. after hours of tequila-fueled jamming. Just one take. That was all it took. By the end of 2022, Silk Sonic's tour had pulled in nearly $145 million from only 37 shows. That's almost $4 million a night. Some fans paid as much as $6,500 for a single ticket. Not bad for a band chasing a retro sound in a digital age. Then came the surprise. On August 16, 2024, Bruno sent out a message. 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Bring tissues. No one knew what to expect. Minutes later, Lady Gaga dropped by with a smile. It was everywhere. In just one day, it broke streaming records with 27.4 million plays. That was more than Adele's Easy on Me. The music video felt like a movie. It was shot on old 16mm film. Everything was black and white, just 2 voices, 1 chandelier, and flashes of Morse code that fans later translated One Last Dance. The song ruled the charts for 18 straight weeks and went multi-platinum in 32 countries. But it wasn't just popular, it was a money machine. During its biggest week, it earned nearly $1 million a day in publishing. Every second of that song was worth over $11. At the 2025 Grammys, Bruno and Gaga performed it with a gospel choir behind them. When Bruno hit a long, powerful note that lasted more than 11 seconds, people called him a human saxophone. That moment trended number 1 on Twitter. But maybe the wildest part, the final vocal was done in one take. It was 4:12 a.m. Bruno had just smashed a tequila bottle against the studio wall. You can actually hear the glass breaking in the song at 3:18. He left it in. He said it made the song feel real. Then came a song with Rose from Blackpink. She teased it with a 9-second guitar riff on TikTok. Within 12 hours, 42 million people had watched it. When the full track dropped, it entered the Billboard Hot 100 at number 3. The biggest K-pop female duet debut in history. The video, full of neon lights and flashing colors, hit 100 million YouTube views in just 19 hours. That shattered records. 9 months later at SoFi Stadium, Rose was performing when the lights went out. Then Bruno appeared. The stadium exploded. Sound meters showed it was louder than a jet engine. As the two sang AP together, 1.2 tons of confetti rained down. That same night, Spotify reported a 300 faven, beyond 80% streaming spike for the song. Almost a year after it first came out, it was suddenly back near the top of the charts. People had been wondering what AP even stood for. Finally, Bruno explained it. It meant After Party Tango. He said it was based on a night in Buenos Aires in 2019 when he and Rose danced until the sun came up. There's a video of it, but it's locked inside Bruno's phone. Only Rihanna, he joked, knows how to open it. By August 2025, the song had been streamed more than 3 billion times, and the duet added 48 million in merch sales to Blackpink's world tour. Bruno's reach across genres just kept growing. But behind all the lights and records, there was something more personal unfolding. In spring 2011, long before the Grammys and tours, Bruno met Jessica Cabin at a hotel restaurant in New York. She had just come from a modeling audition. He had just finished a show. They locked eyes for 40 minutes. He didn't move. Then finally, he walked over. They talked until 2 a.m., long after the chairs were stacked and the lights were off. In less than a year, she left everything and moved across the country to be with him. At first, she slept on an air mattress while he toured the world. But slowly they built a life. By 2014, they had a home in Studio City and a dog named Geronimo. Bruno never talked much about her. He called her my rock once in an interview and moved on. Even the heartbreaking song, When I Was Your Man, he wouldn't say much about it. He said it felt like bleeding on tape. People guessed he wrote it during a rough patch with Jessica. She rarely came to events. In 13 years, only 3 red carpets, then nothing. And in late 2024, fans noticed something strange. Her anniversary posts vanished. A few days later, Bruno flew to Tokyo alone. He was wearing the gold necklace she had given him, but he turned it backward to hide her initials. Then came a comment on Jessica's beach photo in January 2025. A fan asked if she and Bruno had split. She replied, "I will always celebrate and be happy for all of his continued achievements." Cheering from afar, just 15 words. But that was enough to light the internet on fire. People started digging. She had spent Christmas with her parents in San Juan. He played New Year's Eve in Vegas. It was their first December apart in over a decade. Sources claimed they were living separate lives. Others said he tried to fix things, but extended his Vegas shows instead. But here's the strange part. They never confirmed a breakup. She still follows him on Instagram. He still likes her posts about her fashion line. They still co-own the house. Some say she stays in the guest room when she's in town. Some even claimed she was seen backstage at one of his shows in May, but no photos ever came out. It all started on March 15, 2024. News Nation aired a segment, one that didn't name any sources, but it didn't matter. The claim was wild enough to catch fire. They said Bruno Mars owed around $50 million to MGM Resorts after piling up gambling debt. And to pay it off, he was supposedly working it off through his Park MGM residency shows. Within hours, the internet exploded. Gossip blogs repeated the number without question. Reddit threads ran wild with posts claiming that MGM basically owned him now. Talk shows picked it up, too. Shannon Sharpe even told his audience that he heard Bruno once lost $17 million in just one night at a blackjack table. It didn't matter if it was true or not. The image was too perfect. A global pop star singing about gold and riches, secretly trapped by a mountain of casino debt. It was made for viral headlines. In just 2 days, a hashtag Bruno broke was everywhere. And the phrase Bruno Mars 50 mil or debt was suddenly showing up in over 4 million Google results. All of it traced back to a single anonymous claim. That same day, MGM Resorts responded fast, not with vague PR talk, but with a clear and direct statement. They told Forbes and Billboard that Bruno didn't owe them anything. Their exact words were, "No debt." They even said their relationship was based on mutual respect. And they made sure to remind everyone that Bruno was one of the world's best performers. This wasn't just about protecting his image. MGM had bigger reasons. If the public really believed their main headliner was drowning in debt, it could make investors nervous. It might even raise legal concerns. People were already whispering that MGM planted the story just to sell more tickets. But their official denial was strong enough to shut that down. Within 3 days, major outlets like Variety repeated their statement word for word, and MGM's stock price didn't budge. Wall Street, it seemed, believed them. Bruno, though, didn't release a boring statement. He turned the whole thing into a joke. During his show at Park MGM on April 12th, he looked out at the crowd and said completely serious, "Ever since they said I'm on the hook for 50 mil, my phone been dry. Where my friends at when I'm up?" The crowd roared. That one moment was clipped, shared, and watched over 6.8 million times on TikTok in just a day. A few months later, on January 28, 2025, Spotify announced that he just hit 150 million monthly listeners. Bruno reposted it and added a caption, "Keep streaming. I'll be out of debt in no time." Then 2 weeks after that, he surprised everyone by popping up on stage with Blackpink's Rose at SoFi Stadium. His opening line, "Almost out of debt," that one went straight to Instagram and pulled in 32 million views in just 3 days. Every time he joked about it, the story lost its sting. And every time he said something, people shared it. It became free publicity for his shows and his songs. Still, there was a reason so many believed it in the first place. The number $50 million sounded big, but not impossible. In Vegas, high rollers often bet $50,000 on a single hand of blackjack. If someone like Bruno lost that kind of money just $1,000 times over a few years, the total would reach $50 million. Gambling harm experts pointed this out, saying the math actually made sense. And Bruno himself had admitted in the past that he started gambling before he was even old enough and once lost everything in a poker game. That made the rumor feel even more real. Combine that with his massive income, he reportedly earns $1.5 million per show, totaling around $90 million a year. And it wasn't hard for fans to imagine him living like some modern-day Sinatra, winning and losing fortunes under the same neon roof.